These new tariffs are very, very bad news for all sneaker collectors, but there is one group of people that are likely going to benefit a lot from this. And you might hate it, you might love it, it depends on what you personally decide to do. I'm just here to give you the objective information, and you can choose if you want to join that group of people or not. I'm sure you can tell what I'm alluding to. Yes, resellers. Resellers are very likely to benefit because of these tariffs, and I'm going to explain precisely why. First of all, I need to explain why this is such bad news for sneaker collectors, because regardless of which route Nike decides to go down, and there's two likely outcomes, regardless of which one they choose, it's still going to be very, very bad news for sneaker collectors. The newly imposed tariffs by President Donald Trump are set to significantly impact Nike's production strategy and overall operations, with approximately 95% of Nike's footwear being manufactured in Vietnam, China, and Indonesia. The tariffs at 46% on Vietnamese goods, 54% on Chinese goods, and 32% on Indonesian goods pose substantial challenges for the company. So they need to make some decisions. So they might have to choose to shift manufacturing production to other countries, which is a very complex and time-consuming process. Other Southeast Asian nations such as Cambodia and Indonesia are still also affected by tariffs, and establishing new manufacturing bases elsewhere would require significant investment and time. Now, if they were to choose to domestically produce all these items, this would also still be a very big challenge. Establishing manufacturing facilities in the United States would result in higher production costs compared to current operations in Asia. Economist Peter Schiff noted that building factories in the US would add more cost than the 40% tariffs, making this option economically unfeasible. With that said, there's two very probable outcomes with this. One probable outcome is price adjustments. To offset increased costs due to tariffs, Nike may raise prices on its products. For instance, the price of running shoes from Vietnam could increase from $150 to $200. This means straight from the retailer, you're gonna be having to pay more money. So literally straight from Nike, the prices will go up. Now, I actually don't think that this is going to be the main route they're going to be choosing. They might increase prices a little bit, like we've already seen over the past years. I don't think there's going to be a substantial change, like we won't see prices suddenly increase like $50. Instead, they'll probably use a little bit of this decision to just follow in line with the typical pattern they've been doing over the past years, like raising prices from $180 to $190 on certain shoes, like $170 on Jordan 1s to $180. I think they're going to do another round of that, but even that isn't going to be enough to offset these giant tariffs. And that's why I think the next route they're going to choose is something that I don't think most people are going to talk about. And I'm not even sure if Nike themselves have figured this out yet, but if I was in Nike's shoes, if I was Elliott Hill, the CEO, this is the route that I would go down, because this is the smartest way to go about it, knowing that the resale market exists, knowing how supply and demand works. Elliott Hill, if you're listening to this, this is what you need to do. You need to shift your market focus outside of the US. This means Nike might prioritize markets in other countries where tariffs are not in effect, potentially reducing the emphasis on US sales. So this strategy could help mitigate the impact of tariffs, but it may lead to a decreased availability of certain products in the United States. So obviously we know that on the Nike Sneakers app, you see a broad range of countries. We know that they obviously ship to retailers in other countries too, but usually the United States is getting the overwhelming majority of stock. And I predict that this is likely going to start changing. They still will likely receive the majority, but probably not the overwhelming majority. I know this isn't going to be great for sneaker collectors in the United States, but I just think from an objective perspective, if I was running Nike as a company, just trying to maximize profits, this is the route that I would go down. If Nike decides to reduce its stock in the US and shift more inventory overseas, it could very likely drive resale prices up for limited items in the US secondary market. And the reason for that is because even though it's the same shoe, even though it's just the same shoe in Europe or now the same shoe in a different country, there's costs to ship that product overseas for resellers. And so let's say if you're in Europe and you want to sell the product for $200, well, you would more likely want to sell it to another European rather than sell it to an American, where you would have to pay that cost like of $40 or so to ship it all the way overseas. And that $40 is a pretty big difference when it comes to the average margins you see on a lot of resale prices. So this means that Nike knows that it can increase the stock overseas, and everyone overseas could easily get pairs. Meanwhile, people in the US are struggling to get pairs, and the resale prices in the US are going to go up. Because the prices are going up in the US, it's still going to maintain that overall hype, which is necessary for those products to still sell out in the other countries. So let's say they drop a shoe that just sells out in Europe, maybe resells for about $10 to $15 over retail there. That's still enough for them to sell out of the product. That's their goal. Meanwhile, in the US, what's going to happen is there's going to be that difference of that shipping cost. So say an extra $40 or $50 or whatever added to the market in the US, the secondary market in the US. So instead of it being like $210, just $10 over retail in Europe, it's going to be like $260 to $270 in the US. This means resellers in the US are going to have the opportunity to make that extra margin, make that extra profit, because of that barrier that exists for the shipping costs overseas. And this is how that market difference could still exist in different countries despite it being the same exact shoe. So I think a pattern that we're gonna start seeing in the next 6 months or so is that it's going to be a lot easier for Europeans and people in other countries to get these very, very limited items. Meanwhile, it's gonna get even harder in the US to get these types of items, meaning the resale market inside of the US is probably going to prosper more than it has in a very long time. And this is all in addition to the fact that Nike has already been planning to slash a lot of stock to bring back hype to collecting. Honestly, this kind of falls perfectly in line with what Nike's plans were. So I think Elliott Hill is kind of like, okay, you know, like this isn't the end of the world. We kind of knew that some tariffs might happen or whatever. This is sort of in line with our strategy already. We just have to make some extra adjustments now. And they're still going to be able to stick to that strategy of building hype and demand, especially in the United States. So again, this is all in addition to the fact that Nike was already planning to slash a lot of stock. But now we won't just see this happening with Nike. We're also going to see this happening with Adidas, with New Balance, Asics. So overall, this is probably going to be very beneficial for resellers in the United States. This is assuming companies like Nike do decide to go down this route of shifting their overall market focus. Obviously, it's possible that, you know, they only decide to just raise prices. I don't think that would be very strategic. I don't think that would be wise at all to just, you know, increase prices of shoes by $50 immediately on everything. I think that would really hurt the company. I think they're a lot more intelligent than that. But either way, this is very bad news for people who just want to collect sneakers, for people who just want to wear sneakers. It's regardless going to be more expensive for you to purchase these sneakers, whether it's more expensive coming directly from Nike or more expensive coming from resellers. I think the most likely route is that it's going to be more expensive coming from resellers mostly. Again, we might see that $10 to $15 increase on many shoes, which is typical pattern we've seen over the last few years with Nike and other brands too. But in addition to that, I think that they are going to shift a lot of their market focus over the next, not over the next, but in the next 6 months or so. I don't think these things are going to take effect immediately, but in the next 6 months, I think this is what we're going to start seeing. Now, that doesn't mean I'm expecting a boom to the same level as what we saw during COVID-19. I don't think it'll be to that scale, but nonetheless, this should be a positive catalyst for the resale market in the United States at least. So look, I don't know if you're a reseller or not. Personally, I'd really encourage you to consider getting into reselling. It's an easy way to make some side money. Like just yesterday, MoMA did a shock drop for the Air Max 95 Reverse Gradient, and those things currently are reselling for a ton of money making hundreds of dollars in profit, and we posted all the early info for this. We also alerted when it actually dropped with our monitor with add to cart links. People who were botting it too got over 10 pairs. It was an absolute cookout. There's no one who does it best when it comes to sneaker reselling and reselling any type of item in general. Like recently, Pokemon has been popping off like crazy. I really encourage you guys, if you haven't, get into reselling, and if you do, make sure you join Endurance, because there is nobody that has been doing it better than us over the last decade. We've been doing this since 2018. We have all the best connections, we have all the best resources and software. All I'm trying to do is help you guys out, and if that means helping you make some more money so you could afford those limited sneakers you really like, I'd highly encourage you guys to check us out. And we even have a free group too, which you could join too with that same link in the description below. Anyway, that's going to conclude it for today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.